water early in the morning. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of our TNCBA recap show. This is our fourth event of the year that we're going to be talking about. We just made our way back from Douglas Lake. As usual, fish catches were plentiful. Everybody out there had something to weigh in, which is what anglers like. But the bite has been real tough. It's been kind of awkward and odd for this time of year. So Kelsey and I are going to talk about that a little bit. We're going to talk about what the top three did. We're even going to do a little on the water session with you all during this one. And then we're going to talk about and preview Watauga Lake, which is coming up for our fifth stop at the very 1st of June. So Kelsey, first of all, let's talk about the setup for Douglas and what was going on. So we're towards the end of the middle of May. Okay, so typically this time of year, we're looking at a shad spawn. The fish are done spawning for the most part. And the water was basically full. I think where we were at, it might have had a half a foot left to go to get a little bit higher, but it was in the buck brush. It was up as full as you needed it to be, or to have plenty of cover in the water. So what did you all find when you got on the water and we got started that morning? What were conditions like? What was going on with the fish that y'all saw?
I want to say that the fish were just really scattered. That was one thing we noticed. I mean, we had an honor start, of course. So I mean, went to the spot I was planning on fishing out off the bank, of course, off deep.
Yep.
And there was no fish. They weren't combined. They weren't, I guess you'd say, collected together. They were just really scattered. And we got there. There was a lot of top water action. I would say there was a lot of fish all over the place, just here, there, breaking on.
Yep.
On the bait fish. They just weren't gathered.
Yeah, and we kind of found the same thing. There was a shad spawn, and guys, when we look at these videos of the top three and talk to them, you're going to see that basically everyone in the top three had an early morning bite and then kind of adjusted as the day went on. So the shad spawn was going on, but it was not in full force where I was at. Like, I would not say that the shad spawn was on at this time. It was starting because there was a little bit here and there, but it was kind of weird too, because I didn't find fish everywhere that I found the shad spawning. Yeah. So it was not like, oh, there's a group of them spawning down that bank and go down that bank and oh, it's guaranteed that you're going to catch them. It was a little bit more hit and miss for us.
Yeah.
So the shad spawn was going on, guys, but it's been weird as far as the weather goes. We've had an exceptionally cool May. Nights have still been down near the upper 30s, low 40s, highs just reaching into the middle 60s. And that's weird for us, Kelsey.
Yeah, normally this time of year, we're already seeing temps of 80. Now, this past week, I mean, the week after, of course, but we're seeing those higher temps. But I mean, the high that day was what, in the 70s down there?
Yeah.
It was like 75, 76, which was probably the hottest day we'd seen that week.
Yeah.
So
I agree. And what was strange is, and guys, Facebook, brings up those memories, and Kelsey was looking back. We'd fished a BFL there the same time, basically, almost the exact same day.
Just a day difference.
Yeah, just a day difference. And in that BFL, Kelsey drew Tim Hicks as his boater, and they had a really good day on the water, caught all their fish out deep, 30, sometimes 25 to 35 foot, right?
Deepest, I want to say, was 50.
Okay.
We even caught one out of 50 foot of water. Yeah.
So they were fishing extremely deep. So as we were kind of planning and talking about what would go on Douglas, especially in that preview show, is kind of like, we're basing things off of where we had seen them in May before, but just this cooler trend had really pushed those fish back. And to kind of elaborate on to what I saw this weekend on Watts Bar to tie into this, Pope had found them. The bass were spawning and the bluegill were already spawning. Like, he would literally find a bass bed right next to a bluegill bed. So like everything's just kind of bunched up. It's like all of a sudden getting hot. So some of these things were running to the bank. They're trying to jump on the bed. But the bass are somewhat a little bit behind. They're not pulled out yet. So it was kind of strange. But for me and Dad, and then I'll let y'all talk about how your day went, and then we'll talk about the top three. But we got to our spot down towards Shady Grove to start out. And of course, you expect there to be a topwater bite. So I pick up a spook, Dad's throwing a buzz bait. We catch our first fish really quick, and you'll see that in the actual video that I put out later. Like it's still somewhat dark since we did that honor start, but that fish eats a spook, and we went on around for a while and couldn't get much more going on. We came back around to that same boat dock where we started. He caught one on a spinnerbait up under that boat dock. I caught one on a popper. We were going into this pocket where the shad were spawning, and on the Panoptics, I was able to see them out in the middle chasing balls of bait moving around. And I fired a preacher jig out there and watched on the Panoptics and brought it to the school and was able to catch, I think, our fourth keeper there. And then we picked up our fifth one on a popper over some laydowns that were there. So the topwater bite was definitely good there for probably about an hour. And then after that, it just shut down completely. Now, for me and Dad, we picked up a worm and we started going down and focusing on more of that black slate. That black rock that you'll find on the bluffs. You find it going into swans there on the right. So we really focused in on that stuff to get a worm bite and cull up a little bit, but we were culling by, I mean, it was minimal ounces. You'd put them on the balance beam and it would be just sitting there teetering. So it was like we weren't making big upgrades, but that's how our day went throughout. So we just kind of had to adjust from that top water bite, but we still caught our fish shallow. So how things play out for y'all?
So, I mean, it was just kind of a hodgepodge day. I mean, really, I mean, we started out throwing top water, crankbaits, and I think Dad caught the first two on a spook. And I mean, like I said, they were busting everywhere, just all over the place. We found a couple buck bushes, and that's where the first two come from. And then I picked up a spinnerbait and worked our way around this little point, and Dad caught two keepers on the spook, and then I caught the third keeper on a spinnerbait. And I want to say our better fish, I mean, the better fish that I caught come off of a spinnerbait for sure. Just working the banks, and they were shallow. I mean, a lot of the fish were very shallow, which was kind of surprising. But I mean, with the attempts we've had, it's not that surprising. But
and getting to the water temperature, like the water temperature was still in the 60s and stuff. And we typically see that stuff around mid upper 70s, even possibly sometimes by now. So the water temperature is way behind. And we were kind of in between moon phases. I think if we would have been either on a new moon, and then of course definitely the full moon, which me and you are going down this coming up Tuesday to fish a little bit on Douglas again. I think with this full moon, we'll probably see some more shad spawn going on. But I'll be shocked if we don't. But that's what's really killing everything, is that water temperature and stuff. So it's going to start bumping up pretty quick here as these days warm up. So
yeah, we're definitely having a lot more warmer nights, definitely warmer days. But it's staying in about, I want to say I've walked through the house and I've got a little thermometer that I can read, and it says it's about 59 is the lowest I've seen it the past few nights.
Yeah, so that's gonna get that water temperature going quick.
Oh yeah.
So y'all are able to upgrade later on. You picked up a spinnerbait, caught some better fish on a spinnerbait.
Caught some better fish on a spinnerbait, and then Dad, he caught a few good ones on anything really. Carolina rig, tube, worm. I mean, there was really no rhyme or reason to how we were catching our fish. It was just kind of a run and beat the banks and throw everything at them kind of day. We were able to cull through the day. I think our smallest fish was about 172. So we had about a 2 pound average.
Okay.
Those connect scales, I mean, that's how we cull our fish.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just quicker and easier that way.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, guys, on that note, let's jump into the 3 videos that we've got, because you're going to hear a lot of the same things that we just talked about. But let's jump into the videos from the top 3, and then we'll come back and we'll talk to you about their breakdown.
All right, guys, how'd we do today?
First place.
First place. Good job.
Yeah.
Give me a little idea on what y'all did today, as far as what were your techniques that seemed to work for you today?
Top water, popper, Spook.
Spook. And then once that went away, it was spinnerbait,
Chatterbait.
chatterbait, flipping.
Just a little bit of mixed bags, a little bit of everything.
Yeah, it's just
Just pick your poison, whatever you want to catch them on.
We had luck on just about everything we threw.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So how we do today?
Did okay.
We got second, 1164.
Yep.
Well, give me an idea on what you all are keying in on today as far as techniques.
Fished up. Caught a few topwater fish in the morning, but not a lot. Missed a few fish. The rest of it came flipping. Nothing. Didn't seem to be anything in particular.
Just kind of random, just flipping, covering water as much as we can.
All right. Were there any certain baits that you?
We caught one or two. We cycled through different creature baits and one on jig.
Yeah, one on a jig.
So just a little bit of everything.
All right, guys. So how'd you do today?
Pretty good. We had 1089 culled throughout the day. Had a real good shad spawn bite this morning, and then backed it up. We culled a couple back shad spawn fish out with worm bite later on.
Any other specific techniques, places, certain types of like depths that you were fishing?
Shallow early and deep
shallow.
late.
All right.
come
Well,
on.
congratulations, good catch today.
Thank you.
All right, guys. So you saw in that video some of the same things you heard Kelsey talking about, a hodgepodge. It was junk fishing. And for some, that's a good thing because you can go out there and catch them on anything you want to. But at the same time, Kelsey, that's a little bit frustrating because you're like, what is it that's going to be? What's going to be that bigger bite? What's going to be the ticket to that bigger bite? And like some of us were talking about, like, okay, I caught fish up shallow. You heard from all three of all three of them, those three teams, which Andy Hodges, Keith Lester took the win on this one for us with 12 pounds there. And then you had Hall and Hamilton in second, the Winchesters in third. And they were all talking about you had an early morning bite and then they were able to cull up later on in the day. So it definitely seemed like there was the smaller fish seemed to bite that morning. I didn't really hear anybody talk about catching a big one super early. Our big bass for the tournament was in the 3 pound, almost 3.5, 3.25 there. So nobody brought in a big monster bag or a big bass for us, which had been the norm throughout the last couple of weekends down there. It'd been taking 12, 13 pounds to win. We were just talking here a second ago, guys, the white pine from this past Saturday, which is a week after us fishing, only took 16.5 or close to 17 to win, which seems a little bit low for this time of year. But that was the key. Junk fishing.
But better.
But better. But junk fishing was the key, Kelsey. So these guys switched up. You heard spinnerbait mentioned again, flipping in those that buck brush and around laydowns. But what do you think is the biggest key? Put you on a spot a little bit. What do you think is the biggest key to a shad spawn tournament and trying to do well in a shad spawn tournament?
Location.
Location,
Of course.
Location.
Location.
Because I mean, like, you can totally ruin your whole day if you miss it. I mean, some of these guys, probably had, I know me and Dad had a limit in about 30 minutes. And yeah, we did do some culling later on, but if the bigger fish had been up there, somebody could have blown this thing out of the water just like that. So these guys, everybody kind of was thinking that way. When you get to Mayon Douglas, you've got to be thinking of shad spawn. You want to be looking for hard cover, rock, riprap, docks,
buck bushes,
and those buck bushes. And you'll find those on points, guys, and especially shallow points. And those shad will get up there and they start to beat against any hard surfaces, and that's so that they can spawn and knock those eggs out. And another way, you may not see them going down the bank. I mean, it'll look like a fish is busting through them when they're actually just spawning. But another way to figure out that they are spawning, and you'll see it throughout the day even sometimes, is they start following those spinner baits back. And when you feel them rubbing up and beating against the blades of that spinner bait, or you look down and it's coming back up to the boat and you see 5 or 6 shad just grouped around your spinner bait, that's when you know the shad spawn's going on, because they're sitting there trying to mate with that spinner bait.
That blade.
Yeah, with that blade. And they see that flash. That's why a spinner bait is such a killer deal this time of year, post spawn, KBD's made it famous, even more so when it's kind of died off a little bit. You don't hear as much about a spinnerbait, but these post spawn tournaments, it comes back into play all the time whenever there's a shad spawn going on.
Oh yeah.
Now, like Kelsey was talking about, even afterwards, when you all were throwing that Carolina rig in that tube, were you all still really close to these buck bushes and points near these buck bushes?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'll say this. The one spot, Dad and I caught a bunch of our fish in one bush. I'm
Okay.
not kidding. Like we come back and it'd reload, or we at one time caught 3 fish out of the same bush.
Okay.
Just boom. I hook one, get it in. He's throwing over there, hooks one, gets it in, and then we got another one. I mean, off the same bush.
So I think it's safe to say, like, if you find a shad spawn area, don't leave that. They may not be up there on top water anymore. They may not be right up on the bank, but you could pull off or fish the point or fish around that buck brush, fish maybe a little bit deeper. You heard the Winchester say they switched up to a worm later on in the day. You heard the other guys were flipping. Like I said, it seemed like people started focusing a little bit on that middle to bottom part of the water column instead of focusing on that upper portion of the water column once the shad were not actively spawning right there along the riprap or the laydowns or the buck brush.
Yeah. And I mean, just with what I was doing with throwing my spinnerbait, I was reeling it slow. I was keeping it in contact with the bottom, just having the blades, just spinning very slow.
Okay.
Just dragging the bottom basically with it.
Okay.
So I wasn't burning it or nothing like that. I was keeping it in contact with the bottom as well.
Okay. So there you go, guys. You can kind of see from these patterns. Yeah, everybody probably caught them on a little bit different things, different types of baits, creature baits, the Carolina rig with a lizard. But the key here is you see that same transition. Throwing top water in the morning, those shatter up super shallow as the sunlight the sun gets up, more light. Seems like everybody moved towards the bottom, but still kind of focusing in the same areas. Those fish just kind of pull off. But the other thing I'll talk about is key is more so than any other time. And there's always going to be these windows of bites, but it seems like you've got a window for the early morning, and then you're going to have a window for later in the day, about noon or thereabouts, that you better capitalize and get those bites then too, because otherwise kind of throughout that middle, sometimes it's quite dead.
Oh yeah.
So, all right, guys. So kind of wrapping that up, the Douglas tournament was brought to us by Piney Pawn and Firearms. We want to say thank you to them for that. Again, awesome job to Andy Hodges, Keith Lester for their win. Congrats to Hall and Hamilton for another second place. They're super consistent. So talking about points right now, we do 2 drops. We haven't put a drop into the points yet. So it looks a little bit more spaced out than it will here probably after Watauga when we finally put a drop in. But they're super consistent. So the points are going to get tight again once we put that drop in and everybody's still in play. And then the Winchesters coming through there and finishing third. So great job to all 3 of those teams. Again, Douglas is a fun one because everybody's catching fish. Just a little bit tough this time, a little bit odd. They definitely threw us a curveball with size and quality, but it's always great to see everybody get a chance to come in and bring fish to the scales. So that was fun. All right, guys, so in the videos of the top 3 and here in the recap video, you've heard us talking a lot about a shad spawn, focusing on top water early in the morning, and that's a big key here in the month of May, especially on Douglas. So I'm going to let Kelsey talk to you a little bit about his popar and what he focuses in on, but you heard us talk a little bit about buckbrush or water willows, and this is some of the stuff that you're going to key in on for a shad spawn in May here on Douglas, especially out here on these points. Now, Kelsey is throwing the new P71 popar, which is going to imitate that old-timey P70 that they used to make. But Kelsey, what are some things about the popar and the way you work the popar that really helps it imitate those shad and during a spawn?
Well, the thing I like about this newer popar, one, it's based off of the older style, but you can actually walk it, which I think is kind of the best of both worlds. It's a walk and chug type deal. So you see how it's spitting that water, it's walking back and forth. That really imitates that shad spawn because they're always up flickering on top of the water and doing all their stuff. So The best thing that I found to work is kind of work it a little faster, like you would a spook or something like that, but just work it back and forth and let it do its thing and spit that water out like it's doing right now.
Now, of course, this topwater bite's going to be an early morning thing. We're here later in the day, so you can get a good visual on the bait. But it's definitely going to be a short window early in the morning. You may have an hour if it's a little more overcast, maybe 2 hours. But the topwater bite is going to be quick. So you got to make sure you're in the right area. All right, guys, so we had some audio trouble here with the video. But what I was talking about in this case is kind of that transition after the shad spawn, what you're going to do. Now that bait's still going to kind of hold around these same areas, but those fish are going to get tighter to cover, especially as that sun comes up, and they're going to hang out there. They fed up early that morning. They'll have another feeding window a little bit later in the day. But the key is to find baits that you can get in and around that cover, maybe getting deeper into that cover. And you heard a lot of people moving deeper down in the water column, moving to that mid-depth, starting to focus on bottom baits. One of the baits I really like here is a swim jig, because you can skip it further up under there than you could a spinnerbait. Spinnerbait's still a great bait to have on, but you can get that swim jig way up under there and really work any part of that water column that you want to. So the action that you impart there, throwing shad colors, you're looking for that bite. You're still trying to entice those fish that are hanging around that buckbrush. Now the other thing that you can do is switching up to a pitching rig here, and I'm throwing a soft plastic, 1/2 ounce weight. You might be able to go a little bit heavier depending on the cover that you're throwing at. But instead of trying to skip up under limbs and stuff, with the pitching rig, I'm going to be flipping down into these bushes, trying to get into some of the heavier cover, looking for those bass that have just suspended. They're hanging out in the limbs. And as that bait falls past them, you're going to get a reaction strike. But again, this is something to try later on in the day, because as those fish get done feeding, like I said, there's going to be another feeding window somewhere there, midday, midway through the morning, whatever it may be. But I'm going to hang around this same cover where I found that shad spawn early that morning. I'm just going to go at it with a little bit of a different technique, swim jig, pitching rig, but go deeper into the cover, look for that shade because they're going to get in there and hide, but stay around the same stuff that you've been flipping at all day long. And again, in this case, I'm throwing a Pit Boss on a flipping hook, 1/2 ounce weight, bobber stop, maybe go up to a 3/4 ounce. Let's shift gears a little bit, Kelsey. Douglas is behind us. That's out of the way. But we're going to a lake now that Douglas they call a highland reservoir. I'm sure it's deep. It drops 40, 50 feet. But now we're going to what I really consider a highland reservoir. So we're moving up to Watauga. We're talking super clear water down lake. We're talking, in my opinion, it's better than Holston in the fact that you can play both species. Well, I should say all three, because the spots are killer here, there too. So let's go ahead and shift gears to Watauga a little bit and talk about that one. This one's going to be presented to us by Kingsport CPA. This is their second one that they're sponsoring for us this year. So let's talk about Watauga and what you think is going to be going on there to wrap up the show, dude.
Not too certain on it just yet. I'm still got a lot of things to think about, but I mean, I'm hoping for a good topwater bite. I mean, you and I both know this time of year, you could, if it's right, you could be on a topwater bite all day.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just one of those lakes that you can do that.
Yeah.
I'm hoping for that.
Yeah.
But,
especially if we catch an overcast, a little bit of drizzle. Yeah, definitely. You can have a topwater bite all day long.
But I still feel like there's going to be some fish shallow. I feel like you're going to catch the majority of your fish shallow. I still feel like it's going to be a good shallow bite. You're going to have them sitting up, and I would be working some floating knocks with square bill, swim bait, spinner bait, and throwing popper, whopper plopper, something like that.
Definitely. And the thing, guys, that you have to keep in mind about Watauga and Holston as well is they are so deep, clear. The volume of water that you have here, they warm up slower and cool off slower than all the other lakes. So whenever everything else has got a spawn going on or a shad spawn going on, Holston, Watauga are usually a couple weeks behind. So the smallmouth spawn early. They go before the largemouth do. So the smallmouth are definitely done doing their thing as far as spawning up there.
Oh yeah.
But I'll be honest with you, like it's funny to me, smallmouth, if we were going up there in April, you'd see a ton of smallmouth weighed in. I feel like
Oh,
on
yeah.
this one, it shifts gears as you get into June, that this lake really takes on a whole new face and largemouth really become the main star. And for me, when I fish it, if I'm fishing up there, we'll say January through April, I'm focusing like somewhat down the lake, as I would say, like below Butler Bridge, and focusing in on brownfish. But then as soon as you get through April, you get into May and through some of these summer months, I kind of shift gears and I head up the lake, get into those rivers, whether you're running back in there to like Pappy's, you're running up into the Rhone, the Watauga, the Elk. I get up there and start looking for greenfish. And that's where I seem to have my most consistency and luck. It seems like those smallmouth, once they get done on Watauga, I have a hard time finding them and getting them to bite.
Mhm.
Once they
I
kind
agree.
of pull back out, once that worm bite's done, it gets tougher. But I'm with you. You're going to have another early morning bite with topwater, the whopper plopper, a spook. And I'll be honest with you, I think the chance of somebody coming in with a bag that is, which we had Craig Powers and Chris go up there not last year, but the year before that, and they brought in 23 pounds in our July tournament up there. But that's the other thing that I want to talk about that comes into play, and those are those glide baits. Okay, the big, the freakishly big top water or the wake baits. The Huddleston could play even a little bit, but really a suspending or floating swim bait is a major player, because these big largemouth will pull out into the ends of these trees. They'll pull out under these docks, and the main forage up there is very different. I feel like your bigger girls up there are eating that trout. So if you get a trout imitating bait, that is key. I love the whopper plopper and monkey butt, because I feel like it at least has that purple stripe. It's got kind of a brownish back, so it matches a trout a little bit. So I really like that color up there. But that top water and just that floating, suspending swim bait, those are big players up there when you can get around those laydowns and stuff.
Oh yeah.
So that's what I would be looking for going up there with a game plan. I'm going to stay shallow. I'm going to be around laydowns. I'm going to be around docks. I'm going to be throwing some top water early. I'm going to switch up. And especially if we get some sun, you get some sunlight, those fish are really going to pull in tight to those laydowns and tight up under those docks. And that's when that swim bait and stuff comes into play. But now you start getting overcast. They start to roam a little bit more. They get a little bit more scattered. It's a little bit tougher. But one thing I will say is, guys, if you go up there with the idea of throwing that swim bait, if you go up there with the idea of working around those docks for those bigger largemouth, pay attention to your bait all the time, because I cannot tell you how many times I've been up there and those girls are just following it.
Yeah.
And they follow it all the way out to the bow. And whether it's a little twitch or something that you do to the bait that gets them to react, you've got to be paying attention, or else you'll have heartbreak, because you'll be sitting there reeling in super slow and you're not paying attention. You're just ho-humming around, and all of a sudden you look down at the boat and there sits a 6 or a 5. Or I mean, Gary had our big fish for the year up on Watauga a couple of years ago. I think it was a little over 7. So I mean, there are some giants that are swimming around in that lake. So what are you thinking it's going to take to win, Kelsey? I know we've probably been way off on everything. It was blowing my mind weighing those fish on Douglas at how light they were, because they were just they were slicked out. But let's go ahead and put ourselves on the tape here and say what we think it's going to take to win.
I'm going to say 1539.
Oh, you're getting real specific on me. So 1539. And the key is, do you remember here, we go 3 fish for night tournaments once we get to the summertime. So there's still 5 fish. So he's thinking around a 3-pound average. Somebody's going to come in with a good kicker and then some other good quality fish. The other nice thing that about the largemouth up there is the fact that they only have to be 12 inches long.
Oh yeah.
So like you can go up there and get you a limit of 12 inches with largemouth or the spots and not have to fool with those smallmouth. Okay. I'm gonna say the same thing. I'm gonna go slightly on the over, just because I think with this warm weather that we're having, if it stays consistent, which it looks like it's going to into that next week, I think somebody they'll get a real good one. I'm going to say a 6 or a 7. And then I think they're going to put some 2-pounders with it. So you're going to have 8 pounds and those 2-pounders and then one really good one. I don't know. I'm going to think probably about the same thing. 15. Now somebody might go up there and slay that big bag over 20. It's definitely possible.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely possible
Oh, yeah.
if the conditions are right and stuff. So I think we'll have a good one. I think it'll be another one of those where everybody brings fish to the scales, because I really do think everybody's going to be able to catch them. They'll be up shallow. I think it'll be you'll hear probably a lot of the same baits talked about: a spook, a popper, a spinner bait. I just think that maybe the only difference is you'll hear those trout swim baits come into play, just because it's so specific, the glide bait. So I think those will come into play a little bit more here than they would anywhere else, but I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a good one. We're going to it's going to be a safe flight to 3 guys for that one, which is probably going to be about 6 a.m. We're not going to try to get out there and get started before then. So 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. But I think it's going to be a fun tournament, guys. So y'all come out there and join us. Again, thank you to Kingsport CPA for sponsoring this one coming up for us. And this is going to put us to our halfway mark, Kelsey. This is going to be tournament number 5 out of 10, done and out of the way. So we're really going to get our picture in the Angler of the Year and in the Team of the Year of what's going on and how that's going to play out.
I'm looking forward to seeing how those drops really play out here in the next little bit. Cause I mean, that's going to shake up the.
Oh yeah. Because a lot of people didn't get to go to the out of town. So now you put that one drop in there and everything scrunches back up to give us an accurate picture of what's going on. A lot of people are going to be in play. And then after this day tournament, you get that transition into night tournaments. And that's where, you know me, I'll be asleep by 10 at somewhere. I'll be curled up in the truck. I'm going to try to help Dad get a few fish in the boat, and I'll be knocked out. But those night tournaments are coming into play. So it's a big shift in the season on how we're going to fish things. So we'll be halfway through and we'll be hitting the home stretch then and seeing who's going to be going into that classic with a shot at the title. So that'll be fun. But guys, I appreciate y'all coming out, watching. Again, these videos are fun for us to do. Hope y'all are learning a little bit from them. Hope y'all take away a little bit going to the next event with our preview of the upcoming tournament. I want to say thank you to Kelsey for being the co-host and helping me out here. It's been fun, guys. But guys, we will see you on the next show after Watauga. I hope y'all check out the videos that we've been posting. Watch those, learn a little bit from those. Kelsey, you got anything to send off with them, man?
Go catch them.
Go catch them, guys. Y'all have fun. Hit the water. Get some practice in. We'll see y'all up at Watauga, guys.